Hey, how's it going? Today we're going to be looking at some very unique buttons, and these are the ENTH KRM buttons, which are 3D printed and utilize mechanical keyboard switches. I requested the 30mm button set from them, and the packaging is mislabeled as the stickless set, but if you are interested in trying these out for a hitbox, they do offer a 24mm button set. Inside, there's a few stickers for an added aesthetic touch. Mine came a little bent though, but I still like the idea for an added bit of personalization from the company. So here's the button. They only come in a black colorway, and they have a matte texture to them because they are 3D printed. They are good prints though, so they're not overly rough, and they are nicely smoothed out. And then on the bottom, we can see the PCBs for the buttons. Because they're screw-in buttons, they also come with this tool to tighten and loosen the mounting ring, but I didn't really find it too useful, but maybe I was using it wrong. You also get this small bag of extra parts, just in case you need to repair any of your buttons down the line. Close up, you can get a better look at the quality of the print, and you can see that it's very smooth and you shouldn't have any issues with irritation. These are screw-in buttons, so they have the outer ring for mounting instead of the traditional snap-in buttons, which are susceptible to breaking over time, so if you are someone who likes to mod a lot, then this is great for you. On top of that, you can just easily tighten and loosen it with your hands, so there's no need for additional tools. On the mounting ring, you can also see the ENTH logo popping out, which is a nice added touch of branding, even if you won't see it. On the bottom, you can see the usual connector prongs along with 2 screws, and unfortunately the switches are soldered in, so they're not hot swappable, but you do have the option between KL Speed Silvers and KL Speed Bronzes for either linear or clicky switches. As for installation, it's really easy. All you need to do is first unscrew your button, place it into the top, and then on the other side, screw in the button so that it doesn't move around, and once it's secure, you're good to go. As for the tool, it can help you loosen the buttons, but for tightening them, it is a bit hard to use, so I would just use your hands for the tightening process, and then use the tool to loosen the buttons if you need to make adjustments. Now, something to keep in mind with screw-in buttons is clearance. As you can see here on my Mad Catz TE, the mounting plate is far too big for the button to actually fit with the screw-in ring. I was able to get around this by bending the mounting plate, but just make sure that you check it on your arcade stick, as it may be different, as it may be the control board that's in the way, which can't be bent. Something I didn't consider when I first got these buttons is how they're structured, and I initially thought they would be more like Sanwa buttons, but they have flat button caps which are more so like Seimitsu buttons. The button rims on these appear significantly larger than Seimitsu and Sanwa buttons, and the part of the button you actually press seems much smaller than most other buttons, but I think that's just because of the flat design, as when I compared it to my Hayabusa buttons, which are similar in size to my Sanwa buttons, there wasn't much of a difference in size. As for the feel of the buttons, you definitely do feel a bit of roughness when you play with them. However, it's not that it's irritating, it's just that you do definitely feel the different material, but that's to be expected with 3D printed parts. They're not just going to feel like your normal plastic like on other arcade buttons. That isn't a bad thing at all, and I actually quite enjoy the use of these buttons, along with the sound and feel of them. As for scratching, you really have to look at it closely and with the right lighting to see it. I ran my nail through it to scratch it, and the scratch did stay. However, it is also very hard to see it unless you're really close and at the proper angle. My camera couldn't pick it up, but there are some scratches on the buttons. So from the sound test, you may have noticed that some of the buttons actually sound deeper than the others, while some are a bit lighter in sound. And this might not be an issue on the buttons themselves, but rather the acoustics of your arcade stick, so just keep that in mind. The buttons are significantly quieter than the slappy sound of Sanwa buttons, which is really good, especially if you're practicing things, like when you're practicing electrics or some new tech that you've recently learned of. If you're looking to change things up in terms of feel and aesthetic, then I think these buttons are a good option. The linear switches don't provide all too different a feel from standard arcade buttons, but it is a nice change of pace. I really like the matte texture as someone who is used to buttons with glossier finishes, and it is pretty satisfying in feel while also contributing to the nice look of the buttons along with the added touch of the flat button rims. Additionally, the matte texture can even have practical use if you're someone who sweats a lot, as your fingers won't slide around on them too much. For sound, if you want quieter buttons, then I think these are a pretty good option as they aren't excessively loud like Sanwa buttons are, so if you're practicing combos, tech, or even mashing, you won't bother people as much. A few things I would like added are hot swappable switches to personalize the feel of the buttons, and the option for additional colorways so that way you can match them with any art theme. Anyways, thanks for watching, let me know if you have any questions, and please consider subscribing. Thank you.